Okay, so I am starting a live because I'm actually trying to, here we go, there's Kevin. I'm about to be interviewed by Kevin. We're having some technical issues on his side when I try to connect through his live. So I'm going to start my live and I'm going, there he is. Yay, I'm gonna try to invite you to join. Let's see. There we go. This time. Third time's the charm. We're on our third try now, so hopefully.
All right, it's working.
Yay! Oh my god.
Wow, that's I've never seen that where, yeah, one person can't join like that, but it works the other way. So live and learn, Instagram.
Yeah, well, it's storming here, and so I live kind of out in the woods in a cabin. So when it storms, sometimes the connection is really weird. I've had lives before where I keep getting like kicked off and then kicked back, and then like I'll try and get back on, it'll disconnect me again. So it's kind of weird out here.
This is what happens when the codes are too strong. So Texas is getting rain finally, huh?
Yeah, after a long period of no rain at all. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good for the land there. Well, amazing. Let's do it this way, and then we can still cross-share this later and save it.
Do you have a way to like alert your followers that we're doing it on my handle? I'm not quite sure how it works.
Yeah, so it'll look the same because we're both
cool.
live. So anyone watching, can jump in either way. So it should be good.
Amazing.
And yeah, I'm excited for this. I know I've been seeing your work online for a long time, and I think you're one of the powerful voices that's kind of holding a certain flavor of the masculine feminine dynamic, which I think is really important for people. And so yeah, I would love for you to just start off by sharing, what even got you into this work? Like, when did you start writing? When did you start coaching? Like, what happened?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to do this. I honestly don't do a lot of lives at all. I've had more people start requesting it, and I historically have been pretty shy with video, but I'm starting to now just kind of surrender to the process of, like getting my work out there more. So I really appreciate the opportunity just to connect around all of this, because again, it's just a very rare thing for me to do this. So I'm really excited about it, and I really appreciate the invitation to be
100%.
interviewed. Yeah. So ultimately, like my path in these realms sort of started, I would say, in 2012. I went through a big process that was, we could just say, like a very deep transformation, awakening process. Many people went through it that year. And at the time, I actually had just gone back to school for acupuncture and herbal medicine and Chinese medicine and functional medicine, essentially just holistic medicine. And when I started going back to school for that and studying that, I basically just branched out and kind of went down every rabbit hole I could find in terms of studying craniosacral therapy, body work, energy healing. Like I just studied so many different modalities to sort of really broaden my capacity to serve others. So at this point, I was still doing really physical healing work on others. And as I started kind of exploring that, I had just very interesting sort of gifts come online during that time very quickly. It was actually very disorienting. I had to sort of learn through trial and error that I'm very intuitive, very psychic, very tapped into just realms beyond just the physical dimension. And this was all through, again, experience. It wasn't something I was really searching for. I wasn't, just following the trend that was going on at that time. It was more like I was having these deep personal experiences while I was doing hands-on healing work on others, and it just started opening me up to whole other worlds that I had never really explored. And during that time, I started actually getting really deep into women's empowerment work. At the time, it was still kind of just like I want to say like the female empowerment realms were just kind of becoming more mainstream at that time. So when I found my way into them, it was more like women's circles, and I quickly went from participating to teaching in those realms. It was like something in me just clicked into place. As soon as I started like experiencing being within groups of women and holding space within groups of women, something opened up really deep inside of me just around my own remembrance of my like mission and dharma in this lifetime. And so, and potentially for many, many other past lives as well, if we could, you know, for those who believe in that. I know I have like a very wide range of followers. So that's another reason why it's interesting to speak to some of these things, because I have followers from all walks of life who believe all kinds of different things. And but I'll just say that like there was a deep remembrance in me of teaching and holding space within the realms of the feminine. And I had many teachers at that time that also just kind of shared with me, like, this is a path for you. Like, this is a very strong path for you to follow. So I went from teaching in women's circles to beginning to hold space remotely, internationally, not just hands-on work. I kind of started this just, again, off chance. I had started an Instagram account. Some women reached out to me that didn't live where I lived, and they were really desiring to work with me. They were just very drawn to my work and what I was sharing online. And again, I had just gotten into the realms of understanding the womb and feminine magnetisms, doing really deep work in those realms. And that was after I had an experience where I was led through sort of a womb meditation, like dropping down into the feminine core, which I teach a lot of that now in my own way. But this was my first kind of experience with it. And when I came out of that experience, I felt so shifted. And then I walked into a room of men, my partner at the time, and some other men he was studying with. And as soon as I walked in the door, they all turned and looked at me at the same time. And they were just like, what did you just do? Like, you look completely different. You're radiant, like you're exuding this energy. And it was because I was really in my feminine. And in that moment, I was like, okay, there's something to this work. And that work that I sort of first started in was called The Art of Feminine Presence by Rachel Jane Groover. So she teaches like womb-based meditation. She teaches lots of other things now. She's a global teacher, but she started kind of teaching in the realms of the feminine arts and the art of feminine presence. So that opened the door for me. And that was back in like 2013, somewhere around that time. I think it was end of 2012, beginning of 2013. And I just never looked back. I had women reach out to me online and want to work with me remotely. And I was very hesitant at first. I was very used to being a hands-on healer. And as soon as I started doing that remotely and saw the results of working with women internationally and still being able to deeply access their everything, their energetic fields, their all, like, just really, I could feel things on a very deep level without having to touch them or be anywhere near them. And so that, again, just the results that I had from that allowed me to start doing really deep remote work with women. And that just kind of branched out from there. Just for many, many years, I mostly focused in the realms of the feminine until last year. Beginning of last year, I went through a massive, I don't even know what to call it, death process. And basically just kept coming back to the understanding that I can't teach in the realms of the feminine. And I can't hold space in the realms of the feminine without also supporting women in their healing of the masculine, their healing to their relationship with the masculine. And there's no one without the other. It's very inverted to teach in the realms of the feminine, divine feminine, whatever you want to call it, which I don't even really use that term anymore. You can't do that without teaching about the masculine as well, because they come together. It's not one without the other. The union is intrinsic. So it was last year, the beginning of last year, that I went through a very deep process that reoriented my work. And I started teaching more about, this was after my own personal process of very deep healing in the realms of the masculine for many years. And just sort of seeing what my clients were experiencing and going through and seeing all the common trends, I started really diving deep into unlocking a lot of just taboo topics in these realms. I remember the first ever post I posted talking about feminine surrender and like masculine dominance. I literally got completely attacked online for that. Yep. And I stopped posting for 6 months.
Oh, yeah. Wow. From that post, because of the response.
Yeah, it was the first time I like took the risk of teaching about things that I felt very passionate about and had been studying in my own realms. And it was during a time where there was just a big surge of you know, I actually live in a town where there's, it's just a very diverse population here. And so there were certain populations of people that were very offended by me speaking about polarity in that way without a sense of inclusivity. And I was so discouraged because I, you know, was just like really teaching and talking about what I was passionate about. I wasn't trying to exclude anyone's experience, but that was how it was made out to be. And so it was pretty intense. It wasn't just like a gentle sort of like, hey, how about you include, you know, it was like attacking me and my work and my character basically. And so I did for about 6 months. I only posted through stories. I didn't post actual posts, and I, you know, just kind of privately did my work under the radar. But then over time, people really began telling me like, you need to be teaching like publicly about this stuff, and just don't worry about, you know, who it offends. This is really powerful work, changing people's lives. So that was when I finally had the courage to come back out again and start teaching in the light.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did. And thank you for sharing all that, Christina. And also a couple things to point out, and let's just make this very clear. When people, I'm imagining that the inclusivity argument is like, it's not just men and women, or it's like, well, you know, and the energetics of masculine and feminine apply to same-sex couples and non-binary couples also. And I say it in every interview and every podcast, I feel, because that is the first barrier to this work, is everyone gets tripped up on that, which I guess makes sense. And that we look at that and we're like, cool. The other crazy thing about what you just said is the people that are the most about inclusivity are scapegoating or radically excluding someone because they're not inclusive enough. So it's just like, I cannot compute, you know, that's a mind fuck and just silly. It's paradoxical nonsense. So, but we'll also have compassion, because the desire to include more people in this stuff, I get it on the core level. The behavior though, if it's not respectful, I don't support that at all. The next thing you said, which I want to go into, which I think is super valuable, is the distortions, and some people call them false light matrices, some people call them inversions, which you mentioned. You know, let's talk about this. This is valuable. And something you messaged to me was, when the feminine energy or the power is not connected to devotion, it becomes inverted or distorted. Can you share about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I teach in my work and in my content and to my clients is that, you know, the reason I stopped using the popularized term divine feminine is because when it's not grounded and rooted in an understanding of what feminine energy really is, it becomes a distortion, or it is used as something that is a distortion. It becomes a part of a bigger psyop that's present on our planet, that its intentional purpose is to separate men and women from each other. Its intentional purpose is to destroy union, because it's the most powerful force that exists on our planet and beyond. And so what happens in the realms of the divine feminine is that there's a hidden sort of sector of the divine feminine realms that kind of hooks into later wave stages of feminism, which were also a part of this same psyop, which the intention was, again, to destroy the connection between men and women and to turn women against men, to be quite frank. Very easy to do, because there's a lot of trauma. You know, there's a lot of trauma that women hold towards the masculine, and that is a weak link that is used to, you know, really destroy women's trust of men, and then to, over time, also really deeply hinder masculinity, because masculinity is fueled by the admiration and love and inspiration of women who respect men in the masculine and honor them and honor their leadership, which our world desperately needs right now. So, you know, in the realms of the divine feminine, what happens is that women can plug into this belief system that men and the masculine are obsolete because they are already divine. They are already connected to the divine feminine. They are goddesses, they're boss babe, priestesses. They got it all on their own. They don't need a man. Like they can just do their thing, and, you know, for as long as they need and desire. And really, not only does the masculine become obsolete in that, but like devotion to God becomes obsolete, because why do I need to be devoted to God if I'm devoted to the divine feminine within myself? and it's self-worship over time. It can become self-worship. But the truth about feminine devotion that a lot of people don't understand is that it is deeply intrinsically rooted in the capacity of a woman to devote to something beyond herself. And we could even be edgier and say above herself, which a lot of, feminist teachings would freak out over that, because it's not about putting a man above a woman. It's about understanding that a man and his power and authority naturally invokes the surrender within a woman's feminine core. The same with her devoting to God. And we could even say the masculine principle of God. When she feels safe enough within the protection of, we could say, the father principle, which is also very edgy for women because they have to go through so much healing of religious trauma and their own father wounds in that. But when they do, it reestablishes an incredible aspect of their feminine essence, which feels primordially safe enough to surrender and to come into their original design as women, which we cannot have that original design without the masculine and without men, terrestrial men, but also the cosmic masculine. We could say, like, we are not whole without that, which is also an edgy teaching, because most people are teaching, well, you're whole, you don't need any of that. It's like, well, it's true that I'm whole within myself, but without a deep connection to the masculine, union becomes obsolete, and union is the driving force for all of life. Polarity is the driving force of all of life. So, attack or warfare on masculinity and femininity is an attack on life. It's an attack on the life principle, right. And it's a doorway into artificial intelligence and all kinds of things.
Okay, so we're speaking truth today. So if you're watching this right now or later, drop us a comment here, ask a question. We'll see if we can get to some questions, because there's so many angles to go into this, Christina. And yes, cosmic, like high level, like holy shit energetics are present, but let's bring it really down to earth for the folks that might be skeptical, because This is where I start my inquiry, although I also go into those realms. Where did feminism come from? You never hear people talk about this. Where did feminism come from? And classical feminism, which is my favorite, because these were women that just basically wanted equality of opportunity with men and in the workforce, while still holding some of what you were sharing, core feminine energetics. So they didn't hate men. They just wanted to, shake up some of the law and some of the old oppressive bullshit. And this was like way back, early 20th century. That's awesome. Like I'm pro that. I think equality of opportunity is great, and women should, if she wants to be a CEO and crush it, she should be able to do that. Now, second, third wave in the postmodern feminist movement is kind of what you were speaking about, which is you're a strong, independent woman. Men are inherently, at worst, evil, at best, idiots, and are the reason everything's fucked up, right? It's all patriarchy, it's all men. And this is weaponized, and I think there's a weird way in which the other postmodern stuff got sucked in there. A lot of the gender confusion stuff, and we're not going to open that can of worms on this live, but clearly something weird's happening. And then you look at, where did these ideas first originate? Well, if you look up the Frankfurt School, if you look up a lot of these French existentialists, you look up our good friend Karl Marx, who wrote the Communist Manifesto, and a lot of these thinkers, which honestly, as an intellectual, I can respect some of their game, because some of them are actually very, very intelligent and they had good ideas. But there was a group of them that basically was undermining Western civilization by making it question its first principles and categories. And the same thing happened in Rome. The same thing happened in many civilizations when they started to decline. And so when you really, really like get under the hood with some of this stuff, it is freaky about how popular these ideas have become. So that's one thing. For you, Christina, let's talk more about the conscious community, right? Because most people probably don't even know, like they probably haven't gone down that rabbit hole. It's quite academic. It's kind of dusty, and I get it. In the conscious community, you said something really provocative. Self-worship, or getting disconnected from life, basically, which life happens in duality. Why do you see with your clients and your work, why are there so many women, female coaches, priestesses, who say, A, where are all the good men? I can't find a good man. At the same time, B, many of them are like, I don't need a man. I'm strong, independent. You know, when the man's ready, he'll come. Blah blah blah. All the men I'm dating can't meet me, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard this.
Yes, all the time. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a huge trend, and it actually was the trend that kind of, after seeing it over many years and then also experiencing it to some degree myself, at one point in time, I kind of got to the point where I'm like, okay, what is the missing piece here? Because something is missing in this. Like, there's something doesn't make sense. There are all these strong, powerful, aligned, conscious women that have done all this work on themselves, and they're hungry for the masculine, and at the same time they are literally like resisting, pushing away, projecting away the masculine with these belief systems that are really ultimately just rooted in trauma. But a lot of that trauma is reinforced by culture and by a lot of conditioning systems that are meant to keep that in place. Because if a woman's distrust in the masculine is constantly cycling in her system, being reinforced by these ideas, by these cultural concepts, by all kinds of different things, including things that are very deeply intrinsic to the New Age and the New Age movement, what happens is it keeps them in this kind of constant looping cycle where they're constantly seeking, wanting, desiring the masculine, at the same time constantly pushing away receiving the masculine on a deep level, because to do that requires a very deep humility, a very deep surrender, and a release of self-worship, the capacity to really say, I need a man and I need the masculine, and to feel that in their whole being, and then to actually start an internal honest study of their own resistance patterns, their own disrespect of the masculine, all the ways in which they like are literally rejecting that which they most desire and yearn for, with their behaviors, with their belief systems, colluding with other women. You know, it's just, I was just seeing this everywhere. And I got to the point where I'm like, okay, this is more than just like, it is trauma. There's trauma obviously beyond it. And that's why I work really deeply with women around this trauma. I don't just, you know, teach about this stuff from a conceptual level. It's like women have to get really deep into their trauma to be able to open to the masculine in the ways they're truly desiring, so that they can receive a man and not be unconsciously pushing away men in the masculine all of the time. But the more I kind of witnessed the trends and the patterns, the more I started seeing like, well, it's more than just trauma, because there's something present in the world, in culture, in society, in the conditioning systems that exist on our planet right now that are constantly keeping women looped and kind of plugged into this matrix. And a lot of it has to do with like certain sectors of goddess worship and divine feminine realms. Not all of it, but it's like there's a lot of loopholes in it that connect into this kind of concept of hidden separation. And, you know, yeah, just women really being in this paradigm of constant yearning, but also closure towards that which they're most yearning for, because of these beliefs that they don't actually, you know, they don't, if they're connected to the divine feminine, if they're connected to this concept of fulfilling all their own needs, ultimately they can stay in that paradigm and stay shielded. And that's what a lot of what I see in like a lot of solo priestess, goddess, you know, even big influencers. And I, like I said, there's no judgment, because I was that at one point as well. Like I was in that place within myself for a long time. Like, why aren't these inner polarity practices working? What am I missing? I'm coming into inner union, and I was so focused on myself and like on healing myself, which is necessary to a degree, but I wasn't actually really looking at my relationship to the masculine, like in the physical, like men in my life, my father, my relationship to, like I said, the masculine pole of divinity. I wasn't actually getting into the raw nitty gritty with that. And when I started focusing on that, everything shifted in terms of my capacity to really come into union on a powerful level. So there's a lot to it, but it's like when we're overly focused on, I guess the best way I could put it to simplify it is, a lot of women use that movement to shield themselves from their pain, and their pain is rightful, but it's like, it's just a armoring mechanism over time is what it becomes.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of men and women hearing this right now who are just breathing a sigh of relief, because this doesn't get brought up. And, you know, back to cancel culture and the woke mob, there's a real fear. Like if you spoke what you just said at like a new age coaching conference, like people would lose their shit.
I know.
They would lose their minds.
I know.
And I see this now. The more I write about and speak about polarity from this core essence level of masculine leadership, feminine surrender, which is what I want to talk about next. Man, a lot of people love it and are like, wow, thank God, this is so powerful. A lot of people lose their mind and say, this is backwards, this is patriarchy, this is blah, blah, blah. And the facts are, and hey, if it's working for you out there, like bless your path. Like I hope you're happy. But most of the people I see, you know, kind of attack this idea of the more, you know, devotion, submission to something bigger than you, union with God and union with masculine and feminine, they're all single.
Right.
And every time I'm just like, huh.
Exactly.
So you think this is all bullshit. Meanwhile, you know, and it's like I have so much compassion and I'm just like, fuck, like I feel pity almost because of the dynamic you were saying. Constant yearning, always seeking, manifesting more like yoni eggs and pleasure wands and rituals. Call him in. And then anytime a man is there, it's like, oh, fuck him. This is bullshit, you know? Yeah. So it's this weird, like yin and yang, like blocker where like they can't actually come into a harmonic. And I think, yeah, there's some really weird, like you mentioned earlier, psyop level shit that has happened. Let's talk about the difference between, because this is another trigger word. What's the difference between feminine submission and feminine surrender? Because I feel like a lot of women don't like the word submit or submission, which I get, because that can have a humiliation or shame energy attached to it. But what does it look like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is a big one for a lot of people. It's like it brings up all the triggers and also all the desires and yearnings and everything. Well, one of the things I will say first is that women are literally designed in their feminine core to surrender and submit to God, to life, to the masculine. And this is a really edgy teaching, but it's been proven to me time and time again through my work and through, again, the work I've done with women for now over 10 years. Even when we have deep trauma and fear and distrust, underneath all of that and underneath all the layers of that, there is a deep intrinsic yearning within our design to surrender, to submit, to open on a deep level, to receive, because the feminine is the receptive force. We are the receptive pole. You just think of how our bodies are designed, and then we, you know, connect into the knowingness that we're not just physical beings, we're spiritual beings as well, right? We're not just physical. I think most people at this point would agree with that. So if we're not just physical beings, then when we're built to physically receive a man sexually, we're also built to receive the masculine spiritually. And even if we're talking about same-sex couples, it's like, again, this lives within polarity, within all of life, within all of beings. Like all of life is built on the foundation of polarity. Polarity is what precedes union. You can't have union without polarity first. And so a lot of people skip over this part. They want to go straight to oneness and union, but you can't without having two opposite poles come together and merge. And that's what creates life. It's the friction and the tension of opposites that creates life. And so if a woman is built to receive on every level, not just physically, she's built to receive spiritually, emotionally, energetically. The masculine is built, if you look at the masculine's form, traditionally, it is built to penetrate on every level. It's built to like be penetrating and initiating and moving outward. The feminine is built to take it within her and to pull within and to create after she receives the seed of the masculine. And so women are literally inherently wired to surrender so that they can receive and open. Submission is a more triggering concept because there's so many people that carry a lot of religious wounding, religious trauma, a lot of negative experiences around what people think of as like the patriarchy, which is so much more complex than that. It's not actually the patriarchy. It's something far beyond that. Like religious empire is a whole other topic. But what I will say is that when you completely remove all of those like just deep triggers and wounds and traumas that make people really shut down around these topics, literally a woman is just designed that way. Like we are designed to safely submit to life and to God first and foremost. And when we can feel that within our own bodies, it teaches us discernment and safety in surrendering to the masculine in a way that feels good and true to us, that isn't putting ourselves in danger in any way or harming ourselves, because we're doing it from a place of deep discernment and trust in God and life. And of course, when we have had trauma, we might not do that. We might submit or surrender in a way that is not healthy, right? A lot of women have negative experiences with that. And then they kind of place an umbrella over the whole term or concept at that point, whether it's a negative experience they've had or they've heard someone else have. Surrendering is a little bit more like, the way I look at the difference between them, which it can actually get very nuanced, is that a woman can surrender without, like, she can surrender to a partner, she can surrender to the masculine in general, she can surrender to even a moment or a man that isn't her partner. That's not going to be as intense or visceral as submitting, which is why you will hear a lot of teachings say, like, well, don't submit unless it's your husband or you're married or whatever it might be. And the way I look at that, when you don't attach, again, specific religious terms to it, just because, again, I have a wide range of audience, submission is a capacity within a woman to surrender on the level of her soul. And this is why there's connection to marriage, because if a woman has not been committed to for life in a covenant by a man, whether it's a spiritual marriage or an actual legal marriage or whatever it is, then she's not going to feel fully safe on the deepest possible level to fully experience the fullest expression of her surrender, which is surrender on the level of the soul, which is submission. So a woman can surrender to God, she can submit to God and to life, but to submit to a man that hasn't really established a container for that actually does lead to a lot of trauma for women, because they're opening on the deepest possible level. It's almost like this is, again, very edgy. Some women would say, well, I don't ever want to experience giving myself over to the masculine. But when women do, they experience the deepest possible ecstasy and fulfillment on a level that can't be touched with their mind. And that is accessed through both surrender and submission. But submission is deeper. It requires a foundation of spiritual covering or protection for a woman to do it without having some kind of, deep impact to her system. Because there is, with surrender, it's like, I can surrender here in this moment to you and your leadership as a man, and it's not going to negatively impact me in any way, because that's the design. But if I were to submit to you, that would be a little bit different, because, again, we're not to me, I'm, at least within what I teach, we're not in the kind of covenant that can hold that kind of dynamic between us. So there's a lot more nuance to it, but this is generally how I teach it.
Yeah. Oof, so good. Again, so many people are just breathing sighs of relief, because yes, the shadow of abuse, neglect, the trauma between masculine and feminine is so large that shining light into these areas with truth is fucking gnarly. It's like,
right,
in Lord of the Rings, when they're going underground and there's like orcs and demons everywhere and they're like fighting their way through it. That's what it feels like sometimes. And, fuck it. That's what we're going to have to do, because this is what the world needs right now. We need men and women who have that level of containment and love and union, because, as you said, it's the most powerful force. And then those leaders then lead communities, and then we have the change we want to see, and we're not living in a traumatized civilization.
Right.
The same way that you describe the difference between feminine surrender and submission is how I think about masculine leadership versus claiming.
Right.
And we can use the word dominance, which that's another one that has a lot of baggage. I like claiming, is like, because like to claim something, you have to be dominant. You have to be a dominant man.
Yeah.
And a lot of men are good at leading, but again, it takes a lot of responsibility and accountability to claim. And so in the same way that when a woman is fully safe and committed to in a sacred container, she can actually submit and open up,
right,
her radiance and it's ecstasy, it's ecstasis in the Greek, where she literally goes beyond herself, and it's like union with God or union with everything, all life. And that's where those mystical experiences come in, and this where Tantra comes in too. For the masculine, it's like, to fully claim and like own something, you're collapsing the quantum field. You're letting go of like your options. Like, well, I could do this, or, you know, let me change my mind. It's like, nope, boom, sword is in the ground and it's over. And it's just, that's pure power for the masculine. Yes. And it's also very scary because a lot of men, you know, saw their father or their grandfather or other men do that from a shadow place, or, you know, claim or try to lead, especially in a marriage, let's say, and it didn't work. Right. It actually couldn't survive the containment. And so we have to let go of these old stories if we're going to move forward. And I think a lot of people right now in men's work and women's work, in the conscious community and coaching and personal development, the divine feminine, divine masculine model, which, hey, I'm fucking guilty. I did tons of that shit. I went full yoga, psychedelic bro, and divine masculine. You know, I did all of it. I've walked that path. I get it. And a lot of my male clients end up coming to me from that kind of trajectory. You know, we have to let go of some of these ideologies, and it's time to do it. Right. My next question for you, Christina, is if you're dating, so if someone's dating right now in 2022 and they're listening to this and they're just like, fuck, like, I want this. Like, what am I in my own way? Or, you know, how do you see the dating dynamic? And this is obviously very kind of subjective, but I think it's interesting. Like, when the man or the male energy, the masculine energy is initiating, the woman is responding or receiving the invitation. Like, how does that work for you? Or what do you see really happening if you were like dating right now, present day? What would be the most powerful way to do that?
Yeah. So do you mean like what would be the best way to do that without falling into all of the sort of
cultural,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've spoken to people in the, you know, who are currently dating, and like it's just there's like it's a field of landmines out there in a lot of ways because of all of these things that are going on. I you know, there's a lot to this, but one of the ways to simplify it is just that the more aligned someone is in their own belief system in knowing, and the more willing that they are to not sacrifice that because of loneliness. And that doesn't mean stay single forever or go down all these other rabbit holes of like, I'm just going to work on myself for years. I don't mean that, but I mean not just falling into instant gratification swipe culture and, you know, trying to connect just for the sake of connections. Like, the more aligned someone is to principle, like to their own principles, their own understanding of these realms that we're speaking to, their own desire for a union, not just a relationship. That's one of the things I teach my clients, is that there's a difference between a relationship and a union. And if you're looking for a relationship, you can find a dime a dozen. If you're looking for casual sex, you can go around the corner and find it. But most people are starting to gravitate beyond that and to want something deeper, because there's something within them on a spiritual level that knows there's a lot flawed within, you know, dating culture. And so like a lot of times I teach women about courtship versus dating, and that all starts from a place of deep respect and reverence for themselves, and a capacity to be led by their principle and by their connection to divine, by their connection to their own knowingness that they desire a union, and that they won't cross those boundaries within themselves because of whatever traumas lead them to believe that, you know, they need to just take the first man that comes along and jump into bed with him, and, you know, not give him the opportunity to truly pursue her and to court her and woo her in a way which is really old school and traditional, but it still lives within us. It's just a lot of people have lost touch with that more traditional way of like polarized dating leading up to union. So like if it's dating without a purpose, then it's really easy to fall into this place of just casual sex, and, you know, dating has become more about sex in that way, like finding someone to have sex with until maybe you move in together, maybe it takes 2 years, you know. But now I see people starting to understand like a courtship or a deeper sense of wanting to come into union. It's really important to calibrate beyond any form of instant gratification and focus on the end goal of building a legacy. Building a legacy with someone else requires commitment to self and commitment to them, and also commitment to the divine, because you're moving beyond the sort of Yeah, we'll just say the framework of what society has kind of set up, the sort of matrix version of dating that is, again, really keeping people disconnected from their power and from the power of union, which is, again, if you find someone else who's just as passionate about building a union, building a legacy, your relationship will be more than a relationship, and it will be able to transcend these normal bounds of like, cultural dating, but also like it can transcend space and time in that way. It can become a covenant versus just a place for two lonely people to come together and whatever it might be, connect over their traumas and their wounds. It's like we need to evolve beyond that. And it does require, again, someone really knowing like what are my principles and how can I date from a place of not wasting time and energy, like still have fun and enjoy and be present, but don't focus on just the short term, and really from the beginning invite deep conversations about principle and alignment, like really check in, like really vet the person. And again, not from like a judgmental space, but just from a place of like, okay, I'm aligned with my core and what I'm looking for. And sometimes dating apps can make that really hard, which is why I kind of tell women to like get out in the world and connect with people, connect with men out in the world, and move beyond their little compartmentalized boxes of just connecting through the screen. Like actually get out and go to events, meet people, get out of your element, go to the gym. Like even if you don't normally go to the gym, like be open to meeting people in new ways. Not that dating apps can't work also, but I think there has to be a lot of discernment and, you know, again, not just falling into like this kind of instant swipe sort of mode.
Yeah, this is so good. And, you know, courtship, what a beautiful word. Holding court or courting, you know, this goes back to, the Renaissance era aesthetic, which is apparently when the modern ideas about love were created that we inherit. And there's something really artful about it and powerful. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that. What's funny is that a lot of this stuff, if you're all about like new, and tear down all the old, just tear it all down, you know, this stuff can be triggering. I know even for me, when I first started to realize like, wow, I'm like, am I getting old? That suddenly I'm aligning with more traditional values. And it's like,
Right.
no, actually, the traditional values are there and traditional because they have worked over long spans of time. Now, that's not to say they're perfect. There's definitely upgrades to a lot of this stuff. But the preference for the new at the expense of the old is very dangerous. Because if you don't have roots in the past and in tradition and in these lineages and values and principles, you're not going to survive the chaos of like innovation and new stuff. Because we're seeing what that's doing for people, you know, the people that are single mothers, the people that are radical feminists, or the people that are, you know, having casual sex with hundreds of people and claiming that this is freedom, right? Well, I'm free now, you know, I can use birth control and just do whatever I want. Like I'm strong, independent, man or woman. And again, I've never seen one of these people that's happy at a core level and in union. And so really the writing's on the wall and everyone's going to have to find their own way into this. But, you know, if you look at what's happening in the world right now, and what's happening is pretty clear, you know, the power structure is shifting. The world's not ending and there's not going to be World War III, but people are jockeying for positions. A lot of the old systems are just collapsing. Finance, collapsing, it's changing. Geopolitics, collapsing, it's changing. That stuff's all out there and it's happening. Cool. If you're involved in that, great. Go into it. But for most of us, what's happening, that's happening in everyone's life is this. It's masculine, feminine energetics. It's polarity. It's devotion, it's surrender, it's leadership, it's claiming, and it's love. So this is not woo-woo. This is not just like, oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah. This is like actionable for every single person listening right now. And that's why I love this work and I'm stepping more into it, forward facing with it. And yeah, Christina, to start to wrap up here, you know, what's the question I didn't ask you that you want to share about it, the topic we didn't cover?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think also I see a couple questions, so I don't know if we should answer those or if I should just
No, you're right. Let's see what we got here. So
I see
okay.
one further up that we didn't get to that might be worth answering. And there are probably others I'm not seeing.
With Sophia, yeah. Thank you for reminding, because a lot of y'all are here dropping questions and we're just like in a flow state.
Yeah.
So Sophia loves nature. This is a good one. If a man doesn't make us feel safe or we don't feel open and trusting, how can we inspire the divine masculine besides doing our own work to surrender? So basically she's saying she wants to surrender or submit, but she doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel open.
Yeah, this is really, really common. This is what I work with women really deeply around within my work is ultimately, so when I'm looking at the question, she's saying, like, if that man doesn't make us feel that way. So our safety as women is not meant to be dependent on a man. Now that, again, women will take that to the far end of the extreme to like, I don't need a man. I've got everything I need. So in truth, we are meant to receive the safety, protection, and covering of a man. But to get there, we do have to first have a sense of our own primordial safety. And so a lot of women have to be willing to heal their relationship to the divine, whatever that looks like for them. I'm not talking about just religion. I'm talking about like their personal relationship to something beyond themselves, to knowing that they are held beyond just this material world. Because everything in this material world is rapidly changing and dare I say even dissolving, right? We're entering a new world in a lot of ways. And so things that people rely on in the material world, all of that is shifting. There's nothing sturdy enough. I often teach, like, you will never have an environment or a man that is perfect enough to warrant the safety of your surrender. You still have to learn how to create that safety within yourself, not while making men or the masculine obsolete, but more so finding a place of deep sourcing connected to something beyond the physical plane, connected to God, or we could say the divine, whatever resonates, right? I don't usually say the universe anymore, but some people still use that. I feel it's a little edgier just to say God or the divine. But if you can tap into that connection within you to that, and if you have anger towards that feeling, if you have disbelief, distrust, like that's the place to start. Because if you can't lean into the divine, it will be very hard to lean into a flawed human man. So it requires a deep sense of trust beyond that man, and it doesn't make him obsolete. It just makes you root down into your own feminine core. A lot of women have to learn this in their hearts, in their bodies, in their wombs. It's a deep internal sense of coming into their design, coming into this embodied safety that actually lives within us. So there is a little bit, again, it's like there's self-healing to do within that, but it's not meant to be done in isolation, just on our own in this kind of excessive, way that disconnects us from men and the masculine. And, it takes practice too. Like it takes, we can't isolate ourselves from men and the masculine and expect to heal our relationship to them. We have to connect with men and, get to know them beyond your traumas and distrust. If the man that you're speaking to doesn't make you feel safe, you don't feel open and trusting of him, start with what that is in you first before projecting what that means about him. Because when I feel unsafe with my partner, it's almost always because there's something going on with me around my history, my past with men. Less often so is it actually him and what he's doing. Not to say he's perfect, right? But like, I'm just giving an example, putting myself in the position of what you're speaking about. It's really important to work on your own trust and then see how you feel around men in the masculine. And that is actually what inspires the divine in the masculine. Like you're asking, how do we inspire the divine in the masculine? When women are naturally in their feminine, like they're truly embodying their feminine energy, and they know how to be in their heart and their vulnerability and to move from that space of feminine magnetism, that inspires the masculine to rise without them doing any kind of control or manipulation or trying to get a man to do anything. Naturally inspires him. It's more about the feminine beingness than it is about what you're doing or a technique or a tool. And that comes through inner cultivation of your feminine energy, feeling safe enough to come back into your feminine energy and dissolve whatever shields or armoring might be present within you to allow that.
Yep. Nailed it. That's exactly what I was thinking. And this question is so common. And Sophia, thank you for asking it. Probably, I would be a billionaire if I had, a couple dollars every time I was asked this. is how do I get my male partner to do the work with me or do something.
Right.
And it's like, yes, that's amazing that you want to grow with him and like invite him into what you're doing. Fuck yeah. But what you just said is absolutely key. It's like the fact that you feel like he needs to do something so you can feel something with him is part of the problem.
Right.
Because the masculine is not going to be inspired to change or to grow with you if you tell him that he needs to change or grow with you from a place of like, you need to do this or else, right? Even if you don't say it, they can feel it.
Right.
And so if you want him in his masculine, you need to be in your feminine. And if you are experiencing disconnection and blocking, you need to dissolve the side of you that's blocking and disconnecting, right? So it is an inside job, but you said something really valuable. It's not about isolating with like just women or just men and like, you know, whatever. It's about doing it in connection. So that's kind of the paradox here. You have to self-source and be connected to your truth in connection in real time.
Exactly. It is a paradox.
So that's the tricky part. Yeah. And, you know, bless that journey. It's not easy. And the other painful reality might be that the relationship isn't meant for covenant or union.
Right.
And that's okay. Like, can you be okay with? Doesn't mean you need to break up immediately or like, you know, but maybe the relationship isn't what you think it is.
Right.
And that I feel like is very common. And it's just, yeah, it's a humble pie that I think a lot of folks have to eat because they want it to be, oh, if we just did another retreat or we just hired another coach or we just did the thing. It's like, yeah, I'll do all that. Like, that's an amazing investment, but that's not going to transform a situationship into a divine union, if that's what it is.
Right. Yes, I do see a lot of that as well. Like psychoanalyzing the person and getting more support. And it is valuable at some point because all relationships will have their challenges and obstacles, but sooner or later, it's important to really listen. Like, is this aligned? Are we compatible in the long term? And are we both wanting the same things? Are we both wanting to build a union and a legacy? Or are we just, you know, is one of us wanting that, the other person is not in that place? And that might require a deeper surrendering to open up space for what is aligned.
100%. Yeah. Well, Christina, obviously people can find you here, but where can people go to work with you to learn more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, mostly just on Instagram right now is where I'm primarily active, and I post things a lot through my stories, offerings that are, you know, coming up or present. There'll be some things I'll be offering soon. I'm running a mastermind right now that is pretty deep, and it's taking up a lot of my resources, so I'm pretty devoted to continuing that. But I will probably be teaching more frequently in terms of like little pop-up masterclasses and trying to do more lives and such. So really Instagram through here is the best place to stay connected with me, but they can join my email list through my Linktree if they want to be on that email list, and, you know, they can DM me if they want to connect directly.
Awesome. So yeah, make sure if you're watching this from my page and you're meeting Christina for the first time, like, go find out about this work. I mean, if you just jumped in the live, I mean, we're going to post this and it'll be saved. I mean, this is a deep one. And yeah, I'm so grateful for you, Christina. And real quick, because I know it's on your side, I don't know if you've done this before. When you hit end here, what you're going to do is go to share and then just title it, you know, whatever you want. I was saying solar divine or solar masculine, solar feminine, and go to tag and then invite me as a collaborator, because that way we can cross post it. And that way I can save it as well. So so it'll archive on your Instagram, so you should be able to do it no matter what.
So when I X and I click save, I'll click share right away and then tag you as a collaborator, you said.
Bingo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know, because again, I don't do this a lot, so I appreciate it.
I've lost lives where I was like, oh no, and I deleted it. Luckily, unless you have it turned off, it'll archive and you can bring it back. But anyway, let's just do that now. And for everyone watching, you know, share this one with your friends and family, your beloved. And when it's posted, actually tag people that can see this, because the algorithm loves reels right now, and it'll try to, like, you know, kind of hide this guy because it's a live video. So make sure you share that one out and tag, because there's some serious codes in here that people need to hear. So thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to, yeah, do this. I really appreciate it. I'm always down to do a part 2 and go really deep into more rabbit holes whenever you want.
We might have to. We're going to put some pins here because there's a lot more
Sure.
to cover. Yeah, stay tuned, y'all.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.